that the time has come to unite these 400 million people.
Pan-Africanism is a global movement that advocates for solidarity, unity, and collective action among African nations and people of African descent with the goal of achieving economic, political, and social empowerment. The movement was fueled by the efforts of visionary forefathers like Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and Haile Selassie, who worked together to liberate Africa from colonial rule and foster a sense of shared destiny across the continent. Zimdina Bebe, a Pan-Africanist and women's rights advocate approached by ABC, said the current generation needs to understand the history and role of Pan-Africanism. She highlighted Ethiopia being an inspiration behind Pan-African ideals can empower youth movements by placing Pan-Africanism at the core of the struggle for freedom and unity.
First and foremost, it's important to identify as a Pan-Africanist and to understand the ideals behind Pan-Africanism. The background, the history is important because that history, unfortunately, there's a continuation. If you study the history of Africa currently, we cannot say that we are completely independent, although we have our sovereign nation states. So it's incumbent upon the youth to embrace Pan-Africanism because Pan-Africanism is a fight for the struggle of Black people, whether it's on the continent or in the diaspora. And Ethiopia being an inspiration behind, the Pan-African ideals, I think it will leverage, various youth movements if we center Pan-Africanism at the core of our fight.
For Zimdina, Pan-Africanism is a love of language and love for the community. She calls the youth to understand global systems and advocate for Africa's freedom, peace, and prosperity.
For me, Pan-Africanism is a love language. It's a love for the self. It's love for the community. It's love for one's Blackness and Africanness. And I think the way I see Pan-Africanism influencing the youth is by first and foremost accepting ourselves as Black people with dignity, with power, with wisdom. And we do have a lot of contemporary challenges, including climate change, including economic, independence that's fueled by capitalism. So young people understanding how global systems are, engineered, how the global system is, the architecture behind the global system is extremely important for young people's day-to-day engagement in the way they mobilize and do their advocacy work for Africa's freedom, including Ethiopia's freedom, peace, and prosperity.
She emphasized that effective advocacy and mobilization demand more than symbolic representation, urging genuine youth involvement in decision-making process to truly realize the ideals of Pan-Africanism.
By reforming itself, African Union can also be sort of free from the shackles of dependence. It could be donor dependence and other forms of dependence. So like for us who are in the Pan-African social movement, we'd like to see an African Union, first and foremost, that's people-centered, people-driven. African Union should be loved and owned by the people. Pan-Africanism will only be real. It will be realized when the people of Africa, when the social movement behind Pan-Africanism is executed. And I think the African Union plays a key and fundamental role to make sure that Pan-Africanism and its overall framework is adopted, particularly by the youth and the women of Africa, who have also made tremendous contribution to the Pan-African movement.
The Pan-Africanists reiterated the need for the African Union to provide space for youth and women, empowering them to become decision makers.